a pile.
Yeah. So we're sort of getting to the tail end of the tournament now. Quite a few people are sort of starting to feel it a little bit. Had quite a few people be like, oh, no, I don't really want to stream. I think I'm, like, real tired and I'm just going to miss play on stream, which I guess, like, when you're not really used to the competitive environment is a real worry.
Oh, that definitely makes sense. Nick Mr. No last name?
Yep, that'd be him.
That would be it. Okay, so
To make sure they're on the right side, I believe they are.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about Blake's deck first. He seems to be playing Giga, which is kind of interesting.
And I believe Nick is playing Bujin Shadol.
The old helmet Shadows.
Yeah, so this is the...
because, you know, you're looking for a light engine and you just think, man, my Winder needs a helmet.
What's already a light engine?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting.
And
what's his ratios on the Bujins that he's playing?
He's playing 3 Yamato, 1 Harume, 2 Hair, 2 Turtle, 2 Crane.
So he's gone very in on this Bujin.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, you know, Shadol fusing a Shadol and a Turtle is, like, kind of good, I guess.
It's kind of cool, yeah.
And I mean, the other round is obviously if you open pretty heavy on the Bujins, you can always just do the old standby of summon Yamato effect, then discard a Shadol.
Does he play any Bujin Carnation?
He plays 2.
That's quite a lot of Carnation, and still 3 tanky. Okay, so he still plays the 6 Yamato.
Yeah,
so that's kind of interesting. The thing I kind of like about this version of the build is you can very easily not touch your extra deck in the mirror match.
Yeah.
So you can just make a Yamato, add a Crane, discard a Beast or a Falco or something, and get decent value out of that, which is pretty cool. But I think most of the time, knowing like real sort of stat variants, you're probably going to draw more Hares, Turtles, Cranes, and just cards that aren't going to do anything alone.
Yeah. Which
just seems... I don't know, it's certainly an interesting deck choice.
It's honestly just one of those things where is the combined engine weaker than the individual engines? Like, do you get more value out of combining them if you're going to open half of a Bujin engine and half of a Shadol engine?
Yeah, I mean, I can just imagine opening a hand of, like, I don't know, just Crane,
Hedgehog
Turtle,
Harume.
Hedgehog Harumi, yeah, and it's just Carnation, Typhoon. I mean, the hand just doesn't do anything.
So
we see Blake here opening the Arsenal, which is nice. It'll be interesting to see if he has the accelerator for the old...
Nick just goes set 2 pass?
I think so, which...
Seems like in that deck is probably a pretty weak opening, because it means he didn't open the Yamato or any of the Shadols to set.
He also isn't playing any Shadow games from what I can see in his main deck.
Yeah, and...
that might just be a card availability issue. I mean, the card's reasonably expensive.
Yeah.
I just don't see a reason not to play that card. It's very good.
Yeah, I guess like if you draw like a Bujin and the Shadow games.
Yeah, I mean, you are combining 2 engines, so you really like sacrifices have to be made, right?
Yeah, it honestly seems like he's running Bujins and he's only running 2 Beasts, 2 Dragon, 1 Falco, 1 Hedgehog, and the 3 Fusions.
Okay, so instead of being like Shadol Bujins, it's like Bujins featuring Shadols.
Yeah, like he's just
direction.
splashing the Shadols into the Bujin more than the other way around.
Have a quick scan on through Blake's deck. We'll see if there's anything interesting. His handwriting's a little bit scratchy, so it's kind of hard to read.
The very standard... He had the breakthrough skill for the armor, which is nice, but he still managed to just go the armor set 4, which just means that like next turn he's going to flip it down, flip it up, and
it looks like from what I can see from Nick's hand, he has like a Falco, a Harumi.
So he has the Shadol fusion, but obviously he's going to have to hard fusion from his hand rather than using the deck. And Blake just has
the emptiness. I mean, he does main deck 3 copies of the card.
Yeah, that's
so Blake's got some interesting trap ratios. He's got 3 breakthrough, 3 fiendish, 3 vanities, 3 wiretap, and then macro warning, Giga Gear, evac, 2 Koth.
So at this point, Blake can sort of just sit here on this Vanity's Emptiness. There's not a great deal Nick can really do to out it. And he can just sit there and search off that Giga armor.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he can just flip that armor up and down.
That is the question, why didn't he break through the Arsenal? A very good one.
Very good question.
So now he can sort of just go in for beats. Oh, he has the D prison.
The D prison, and Blake has the wiretap, which is interesting that he thinks it's worth breaking his vanities.
Yeah, like he's more concerned about the Arsenal than the vanities, I guess.
I guess,
even then that's going to like, he gets to add the fusion, which is nice.
Yeah, so, it's an interesting line. I mean, I don't know what's in Blake's hand, but maybe he has another vanities, which this would just be totally fine if he has another vanities. It's completely, because then he, rather than having a, just 2 mediocre monsters on the field, one of which is adding you a card every single turn, like, you have 2 good. You have like a Gigant, which is just getting you there. You know, you just get there with it.
Yeah, it's really the old Hayden Matthews play of
if having 2 emptiness.
You can break your empties if you have the second one.
Damn right. And he's opting to just go into the double armor.
I believe he did try and deprison Arsenal. The first time maybe. Yeah. Look, not all of us can be Oceanics champ, alright? So, Blake's in a very strong position here. He has an armor search next turn, and another armor search. 3 set, 1 in hand, to his opponent's 3 in hand. Seems some confusion as to what's going on. Life points, maybe? Yeah, it seems like Nick took some damage or didn't. So again, he has the fusion, but because Blake hasn't been summoning from his extra deck, he just has to discard 2, and it's a Harume and a Beast. He draws out the Beast, but he's literally just hard discarding the Harume at that point.
And if Blake has any kind of answer to this
construct,
let's see, what sort of answers does he have? He has an evac. That's actually about it to remove this from the table. He just has an evac. He doesn't play any prisons or like any actual like removal traps. It's just effect negation and special summon.
I mean, he even has like the Phoenix Chain, which isn't fantastic, except he can just if he had it, he would have just Phoenix Chained the effect, and he could just Castell it away, and you don't get the fusion back, and when you have 2 cards in hand, you're like literally relying on him having the 3rd fusion.
No, he just has the evac, so that makes sense.
I also enjoy limited traps.
Yeah, they are quite good. Quite good.
Yeah, it looks like
Nick is very far behind on cards, very far behind on the board.
Blake is just he's drawn a Soul Shard, so even if somehow he breaks his board, he can just get it all back.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see what his life total is, but I'm assuming
I don't think
Blake
he's taking
can
damage
just
yet.
kill him this
turn.
turn.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, I mean, he just gets to accelerators. He can just race card up into triple Gigant.
No, he has like that.
So he wants to
well.
Alucard the back row?
I mean, looking at Nick's deck list, the sort of traps he runs is like D-Prisons, which obviously just loses to Alucard, which isn't going to be fantastic in this matchup.
Absolutely not.
Breakthrough Skill, which if he flipped it, he would have flipped it by now off the searches. He has 2 Vanity's Emptiness, which he'd have to flip prematurely, and he hasn't. The Torrential and the Warning. So unless he's like next leveling this and holding that Torrential, I'd say he just doesn't have a lot. It's probably a D-Prison, to be honest, or a dead wiretap that he's bluffing.
I agree. Maybe he's going for Brilliant. Does he? I'm gonna have a quick look at his extra, see what 3s he actually plays. Okay, so
I mean, if I could make an Alucard into 1 back row, I probably would.
I think that's what I would do too.
Because
so for his 3s, he has Alucard, Soul of Silver Mountain, Temtempo, and Zenmaines. Very solid.
Temtempo is still a good card.
Oh, Temtempo is quite solid in these sort of like rank 4 mirrors. You can just 27 is really big. It just seems interesting to me that Blake opted to Alucard at the end of the chain rather than Alucarding at the start. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been burned by stuff like just needle sealing and just weird stuff like that too many times to not want to just get the back of the table before comboing. I mean, that just...
At that point, that being said though, like, he is probably more worried about the Torrential or about the needle sealing than like a D-Prison. Like, one Randy D-Prison on one of those Gigants wouldn't have put him behind at all, really. That's true. Whereas at this one, it's like, okay, well, even if he... like, does something to me...
I get both the Gigi on his back?
Yeah, I get both Gigi on his back. He's on 500 life points because he got him with the damage first, so he can just make the cowboy.
I can understand that. I mean, at this point, the only trap that's really going to beat you is Torrential or some random needle sealing or anything. It's probably just going to be, like a wire tap.
So it's just a wire tap bluff.
The game is over. So we should probably just move on to talking about sideboards.
We should probably not... I love that we say this and, like... We've said it like 3 times. Yeah. So like, match is over, everyone go home, and then like just...
Well, especially in that last match, it was just, okay, we just missed the breakthrough skill, and it was, Jai just
so
lost.
That's them scooping up.
Yep. So for Blake's side, we have 2 Maxis, Thunder King, a D-Fissure, 2 Dust, 3 Light Mirror, 3 Shadow Mirror, 2 Needle Sealing, and a Soul Drain. So clearly in this matchup, what's kind of interesting is both the mirrors are reasonably good. So I think he would probably definitely bring in the Shadow Mirrors, because the Shadow half of the engine just feels scarier to me. And then the Fissure's good, the Soul Drain is good, and he could maybe... Does he main deck Typhoon? He does main deck 3 Typhoon, so he probably doesn't need more of them at that effect. So I definitely see him just bringing in maybe like 3 Shadow Mirror, maybe 1 Light Mirror just to hedge, and then a Soul Drain and a Fissure, and just hope to floodgate your opponent out of the game.
Nick's side is very interesting. There's a couple of very strange one-offs.
Oh, cool.
He's side-decking BLS.
He's side-decking BLS.
Correct. Which
that is very interesting.
Yeah, to me seems like one of those cards, again, that it either is good enough to fit in your main deck, or you would
probably just
be playing not run it.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so for the rest of his side, he has a Malevolent Catastrophe, a Night Beam, a Mystical Space Typhoon, a Full House, a Maxi, 1 Blackhorn, 2 Super Poly, 2 DD Crow, 2 Mind Crush, and 2 Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. So I'm guessing the Sims... I mean, I've seen this before out of the people playing like the Shadol Bujin deck, where they just smokescreen out into full Bujins and just kind of take your opponent by surprise. I mean, they side in all these side hate against the Shadow deck, these Sims and all that, and you just side into full Bujin. And you just blank all their side choices, which can be really interesting. So I could see coming in here the Full House because Blake's a control back row deck. The Night Beam wouldn't be bad. The Malevolent would actually be pretty good too. Black Horn of Heaven, traditionally quite good against the Giga deck. Mind Crush might also be solid. I mean, he has a few interesting options, but nothing that's going to just, with the same impact that Blake has, to just... You have Typhoon for this card, or you cannot win. He just has a few cards that are quite decent. Another interesting thing for this matchup will be whether Nick decides to go in the play or the draw. I feel like he's probably going to go on the draw because if by any chance Blake just goes first and makes a Gigant and adds a card, you can just fuse for massive value. Also, just seeing another card to draw yourself out of your bad combo deck hands can just be really nice. Also, you should probably bring in BLS because that card is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I really feel he should be main decking that card. Well,
you're playing... It's never going to be dead, right? Because half your deck is light monsters and half your deck is dark monsters.
And more so than regular Shadols or Bujins, you just mill things. Like, if you have a Dark in hand and a BLS in hand and you have Yamato, you just add a Crane to send to the Dark.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're good now. So he's also got the Randy 1 Malcat, 1 Night Beam, which again seems like you just play 2 of those cards if you like them so much. I don't know. I'm not sure what the one-offs are.
I can definitely see him just bringing in all the back row hate here though.
Yeah, definitely. The
Full House could be a complete blowout.
Yeah, correct.
Especially if it hits a Floodgate, a Tanky, and just 3 set cards. I mean, we saw that all the time in the +1 fire format.
Yeah, and he's running 1 Maxi, 1 Black Horn of Heaven.
1 Maxi.
Yep. 2 Super Polymerization, which is probably awful in this matchup.
Hey, it gets the exciting night.
Sure does. 2 DD Crow, which isn't great, only stops 1 card. Mind Crush.
I found it's occasionally worth bringing in DD Crow to stop the Gigiano floats, but
yeah,
usually that's pretty subpar. So Nick decided to go first, which I find interesting. But, I mean, going first and just setting your full effect monsters can be really strong. I mean...
Yeah.
Blake with the MSD for the D prison.
Also, keep in mind he doesn't get to look at his hand before he chooses. So
of course not.
Normally, post side in any deck that's you can easily side Floodgates against, I'll generally elect to go first just so that I can do stuff without getting Floodgated out of the game.
That is a very good point. Blake has got the Shadow Mirror too. I saw it in his hand.
Yeah, giving Giga the opportunity to go first, set an armor, set 3 cards. One of them's a Shadow Mirror. It doesn't matter what your hand is at that point. You're really just going to get blown out.
To lose, yeah.
So
I mean, Nick even setting the dragon, hoping that Blake would go for the turn 1, just set armor, so he could just flip dragon, put the armor back to hand, gain basically a turn and a half of tempo.
Yeah, but that's it. It's disappointing for him, I guess, that he opened a very slow hand. Because if he opened a decent hand, he could have just had a construct on board.
Yeah, he could have a construct or a Midrash or something on the board right now.
Yeah. So he's just swinging with the hair.
Another decent thing about the Bujin engine, at least if you are brick drawing them, they're reasonable threats.
Yeah, they're
all
17, 1800.
17, 1800 sort of attack range, which is pretty nice. I mean, if your opponent's just fatly floodgating you out of the game, it's nice to at least have level 4 monsters that can just beat face if they have nothing but floodgates.
And I mean, it's obviously suboptimal at times with drawing half of 2 engines, but it is the whole thing of the discussion of Shadols playing lights that are impactful in hand or lights that are impactful when they're Shadol fusioned. Bujins have a healthy mix of both those cards.
Definitely.
If you hard draw the Yamato, that's not a bad thing. No Bujin player would ever complain about opening Yamato. At the same time, if you Shadol fusion a hare or a turtle while you have a Yamato in hand, that's really great as well.
Quite strong, yeah.
Obviously, then the reverse is true. If you draw a hare and mill a Yamato, it's terrible, but them's the breaks.
In saying that, though, he doesn't actually have any random milling effects in his deck, does he? Doesn't have a
no, I don't think there's no Lila, there's no random mill. It all seems like it'd be very much either milling off Shadol fusion or milling off Yamato. Unfortunately, Blake is just going with the beats. It seems like he hasn't drawn a lot of back row. He doesn't run that many traps. Even if he's sided them in, especially if you're going to be siding in Malcat, you probably wouldn't...
You probably want to make yourself a little less trap dense, if you're siding in macro and such.
Yeah, but this is the issue. this is the issue sometimes with an engine like this, is that if you open like a Yamato and then like a Hedgehog, at that point you have 2 normal summons, and then you've got like a Harume in hand which does nothing unless the Yamato is dead, and it can just be really brutal.
I mean, the kind of cool thing about that is there's the Night Beam.
So he draws the Night Beam.
Good old Night Beam.
If he hits anything other than the Shadow Mirror, he can like chain the Shadow Mirror, then chain the selected card. But unfortunately, he just natty hit the Shadow Mirror, which is nice for him. Mirror. I mean, it still may not prove to do anything for him at all. Yep. So he's, again, just beating him with those, like, reasonably sized Bujin monsters.
Reasonably sized Bujinji, yeah.
Unfortunately,
I mean, as you touched on earlier with the opening multiple normal summons, some of the normal summons that you open are fine because you can just discard them to the Shadow Monsters to Yamato and get their graveyard effects, which is nice. So, like, Hedgehog, Lizard, Beast are all fine. Dragon is not good if you're going first, but it's fine if you're going second or just later on in the game. And Falco can be, like, really good depending on what your graveyard is. So it mitigates that a bit, but you still only have 1 normal summon and then 1 discard. So if you have 3 or 4 normal summons in your hand, it's just... You just have dead cards in your hand at that point, basically.
Yeah, and again, it just seems like, you can get a hand similar to what Nick probably has here, where you've got like a hare, a turtle, a fusion, no shadows, no traps. And at that point, your options are like summon, hare, swing, pass. And when you're staring down a set Gear armor, it means nothing.
They just get so far ahead of you at that point.
Yeah, you might as well just not do it.
Absolutely. So I see Blake stacking them up, likely going for the Gigant. There's nothing really on the table that would force him to do otherwise.
I mean, other than the 1 Blackhorn, which he may have sided in, and the 1 Warning, there's really just no options for him to get rid of it.
Nope, he doesn't play any in the way of effect negation. He could have an evac here as well. That would be fine.
I guess Blake's just so far ahead that he's kind of just like, well, his opponent obviously has very few options because he's just been like summoning our monster.
Doing this also plays around Honest because... Bujin decks, they always have it in their hand. You have to play as if they always have Honest in hand,
Although, surprisingly, he doesn't run it.
I don't know if I've ever seen a Bujin deck without Honest in it.
No.
But I can kind of understand here because you just have to cut so many cards to fit both engines in.
Yeah, that's definitely the disadvantage.
I could just see Nick here, like, with a deck list on DN, just looking at 47 cards he wants in his main deck and just being like, oh, I guess I got to take the Honest out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the disadvantage of running a hybrid deck. And again, with anything sort of unconventional like that, your big advantage comes from game 1 when your opponent doesn't know what's happening. Like, if you can summon a Yamato and basically just play Bujins...
And then they Black Ship a Cornet or something and you just shit all fusion from deck next turn.
Yeah, so...
I mean, that's just...
That's a real advantage. And the disadvantage for him here is he dropped game 1, his opponent saw Bujins, his opponent saw Shadows, he knows exactly what he's playing, and then, unfortunately, he's bricked a little bit, so he doesn't even have the strength to back it up. So he's basically lost the only advantage he had, which was the element of surprise. And he's now just facing down a much more consistent deck.
I mean, there's a fusion, and that's a lot of value if it resolves. But I'm assuming Blake would have had a Vanities or
the
why it's
tap.
for the warning, but he has the old tap back, and that's really just back breaking here for Nick.
Yeah.
In saying that though, he could just have a second fusion, but if he did, he probably would have activated it last turn. I think.
Yeah,
actually, Blake didn't have an extra deck monster on the field last turn, so it's possible the last card in his hand is just another fusion because the activation was negated.
No,
but it doesn't seem to be the case. I think that was like the only card, apart from maybe even Soul Charge, that could have just actually gotten him back into this game. But at this point, Blake's just doing what Giga does, just playing the plus machines.
Yep, that's it. His opponent has nothing on board. Nothing can really stop him at this point. He just has to go in.
Yep.
And he's just going to pull further and further ahead.
That is right. I mean, what does it say there? Nick's on 5100?
Yeah.
This is going to create what... that
if he goes for a Giga Brilliant, it's going to be pretty close.
Doesn't play a Gigi.
Oh, really?
No, he doesn't. So he can make, I think, at most 1800 with his rank 3 plays. So that's 18... Okay, so no, he can do rank 4, of course. So Gigant, that's game there. And this will be the handshake. Nice bluffs there, Blake.
Auto handshake. Possibly just anger.
Wow, the BM is real.
Yeah. He had a lot. Even like Blake's sets weren't that impressive. Like the Soul Charge and MST, like it's not like he was staring down 4 traps, but there was just that mind game.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the game, there, I mean, he just had to gem the fusion. He had nothing else he could do. But I mean, I think this goes to show, just this match just showed the danger of playing one of these sort of like. As you said, like element surprise, dual engine sort of decks, like where you can just draw the wrong half of both of your hybrids,
and
it just doesn't come together very well.
Yeah, wait.
I mean, I can see this deck being very strong if you open like one Yamato, say like a Beast, maybe a Fusion with a Bujinji and a Yamato, and just you guys go like Yamato Winder turn 1. It just seems very strong.
I think like when you're building a deck, you have to look at what is the worst possible hand I can get. Like you can't Yu-Gi-Oh! Christmas Land and be like, I'm gonna open up a Yamato and a Crane and a Bujin to discard, and a Fusion for when they try and Castell it, and then like 5 back row. Like it's just not gonna happen. You're gonna open like all the relics and a Fusion, and no way to do anything with any of it.
I mean, you just kind of have to think like, I'm gonna play X games of Yu-Gi-Oh! How often am I actually going to open a hand that is better than just playing one deck or the other?
Yeah, and it just means like even when your engines are working, it's so much more fragile because when you're playing a hybrid deck, it can sometimes be stronger than the core decks, but if either half of it's disrupted, you're screwed. Like, if you start with like a dead Shadol in hand and a Yamato, and they bottomless the Yamato, that's much more devastating than if you're playing pure Shadols and they bottomless like an Armor Knight or something like that. Oh, I guess a Mathematician.
Bottomless the Armor Knight.
Yep. There's the handshake. Yeah. So
good to see.
It's just a lot more disruptive. Like if you're forced to set as something because you have a slow hand and they just wing blast at the top of your deck, you're just staring down a hand of dead relics.
I seem to remember one game I played against you where you made me draw the same hedgehog 4 times.
It does happen.
Where he just turn back to square 1 it, next turn wing blast it, back to square 1 it, wing blast it.
Yep.
It was not a fun game. So I believe I'm jumping up now and Blake is getting in for the post-game interviews. I've just got to edge out of here without kicking over any cables.
All right, so we're here with Blake. You won your last round.
Yep.
So you chose to play Gear, which is a little bit unconventional, sort of post-Jules Alliance, I guess. What was the reasoning behind that?
It was sort of a last-minute decision. I was originally planning to play Shadol, but I'm not that good in the mirror, and I really don't like Super Poly.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. So you just decided to make the medical of playing a deck that doesn't lose to a card that... I mean, a lot of people have started maining Super Poly now. Like, the decks are so prevalent that they come up against something that's Earth, and then like you go into Earth Exceeds, and there's just nothing they can do with the Super Poly at all.
Correct.
Definitely fair. And, I mean, you've played this deck quite a bit, haven't you? Like, in the past.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a case of, like, play what you know rather than what's good, which can quite often be, like, the optimal choice if you're not 100% confident with a new deck. So, last round, at what point did you work out you were playing against Bridge and Shadol as opposed to one or the other?
When I saw the turtle.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. We were just discussing the merits of playing, like, a pure deck versus a hybrid deck, and I think that match was a pretty good example of you were playing a deck that most people would regard as being like not as good as it used to be, but it was optimal gear, like exactly what you should be playing. Your list is exactly what a gear deck should be. He was playing like the Shadol new hotness,
which
but
is crap.
Yeah, but if you play it and you make it inconsistent, then you're going to drop games to it. And I mean, it's 5 rounds of Swiss. What's your result again? Your
3-2.
3-2, yeah. So
got really unlucky in 2 of my games.
Yeah, so it's. I mean, you've obviously gone up against like a couple of the meta decks, and it just proves that like if you're playing something that's consistent, and you know how to play, you can do pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
What was the logic behind the side decked Thunder King Ryo?
Mainly against Statella Knights.
Mm-hmm.
Really, just that. Extra.
Yeah, just putting a big beater on the field and sort of not letting them search, making them answer it with something.
I can, and the traps just back it up. Like I don't have to search if I don't need to.
Yeah, the old deal of like just running
the deck hidden
running the one Thunder King and just being able to go like Thunder King set 5, and it doesn't even matter what your deck is, you just win at that point because you're the Thunder King of 5 relevant traps or whatever. Definitely fair. So a couple of cards you're not running. No Heartland Draco.
Yes, I was going to throw it in, but I just didn't really need it.
Yep, that's definitely fair. So it's sort of just a case of like you figure if it wins you like one game, it probably wouldn't win you one game even across like a 5-round tournament. If you're going to like a larger tournament, like an 11-round tournament, would you say you'd probably run it?
I reckon I would, yes.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, it's sort of one of those cards that it's really nice to have, and it just sometimes can just pull out a game for you. But if you're only going to play 5 rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh, statistically the likelihood of you needing it's probably not that great.
Yeah. Also, it's pretty good with a face-up fissure.
Yeah. Yeah. The other card that you weren't running... No, I think that was it actually. It's just the Heartland Draco I was curious about.
Fair enough.
No, good. So was there any choices you made for your deck that you thought were a bit unconventional but were sort of based on personal preference?
Probably the the 7 negations.
Yep.
Effect negations, a chalice, 3 breakthrough, and 3 fiendish.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely a lot.
I never bricked with it.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of decks rely very heavily on their normal summon being like impactful. Like if you stop the tour guide, if you stop the Deneb, if you stop the Armageddon Knight, quite often that can just sort of stop them dead. Definitely fair. Also, especially
single-handedly, the wiretaps won me this Tatella Knight matchups today.
Yeah, and I mean, even in that matchup, then you had the warning here, the tap. You had the tap for the tap kind of deal.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think like you've definitely capitalized on Gear's ability to just open like armor set 4 and.
Well, originally, like last night, I was planning on playing Mermail just due to the fact that you can either just push for game just whenever you want, or you can just sit on a Lind. And with most of the meta decks not running battle traps, I thought it was a really good choice.
Yep. So what made you change your mind?
Going through my folder and just seeing the deck and just sparked in my head thinking that, it's all Earth.
Yep.
And it can successfully run a heavy trap lineup without sacrificing anything.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense to me.
Everything searches everything. Yeah,
no, it definitely makes sense to me. All right, well, I guess we'll have to see if you make top 8 cut or not. It might be a bit dicey at X2. But how, were you overall pleased with how you went today?
Extremely.
Oh, good. Excellent. Thank you for coming on.